It's my privilege to welcome Ambassador Akhilesh Mishra, a distinguished career diplomat with over 3 decades of exemplary services in the Indian Foreign Service. Arrived in Dublin on 26 October 2021 with a wealth of experiences spanning the entire spectrum of Indian diplomacy. Ambassador Mishra has expertly handled political security and geostrategic affairs, economic, commercial, and investment issues, as well as education, culture, and engagements, and India's development partnerships worldwide. His impressive credentials and deep commitment to advancing India's interests make him a valuable asset to the diplomatic community in Ireland. Before his current assignment, Ambassador Mishra served as an officer on special duty at the Ministry of External Affairs and headed the Development Partnership Administration, where he oversaw India's official development assistance and international development dialogues. He was also the Director General of the Indian Council for Cultural Relations, contributing significantly to India's cultural diplomacy. Ambassador Mishra has held numerous prestigious positions, including Ambassador of India to Maldives, Consul General of India in Toronto, and Joint Secretary of India's relations with Nepal and Bhutan. His other notable posts includes Deputy Chief of Mission in Kabul and Deputy High Commissioner in Tanzania. A scholar with a passion of Indian culture and spirituality, Ambassador Mishra holds bachelor's and master's degree in technology from IIT BHU, where he was a gold medalist. Fluent in multiple languages including Spanish, Italian, and Nepali, he is also a deeply versed in Sanskrit, Hindi, and Urdu literature abroad. So, ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together to welcome Ambassador Akhilesh Mishra.
Most welcome, sir. We are so honored that you accepted our request to be the chief guest for this International Week of Peace. And we are highly inspired to see you, sir. And whole stage is yours. Pranam.
Thank you. Namaskar. My very warm greetings to you all from Dublin. Since I belong to Varanasi, the abode of Lord Vishwanath, I'm particularly delighted to connect with Ujjain, the land of Mahakal. At the outset, I must applaud Dr. Vikrant Singh Tomarji for his tireless efforts to promote Indian culture and Indian values worldwide. I'm really impressed by his multifaceted scholarship and dynamic social leadership in connecting people from their diverse backgrounds. Friends, in India, particularly the ancient Vedic darshan, it is held that all forms of suffering, the root of all forms of suffering are in ajnan, ignorance. Rajjavagyat ahirbhati tajgyanat bhasate nahi. Because of ignorance, we see snake where there is a rope, and we start getting scared and get anxiety and suffering. But as soon as we realize the true nature of the rope, then the snake vanishes. And the fear arising out of snake also vanishes. And the suffering because of that fear disappears. So I think the most significant contribution of Indian ethos, Indian thought process is the vision, the Vedic worldview, the concept of consciousness, concept of knowledge itself. How do we know? How do we become aware of the reality surrounding us? How do we become conscious of something? And also, more importantly, who becomes conscious? Who knows? Who is the knower? In Bharati Gyan Parampara, friends, the Indian knowledge tradition, I see that the basic approach is quite opposite, almost diametrically opposite to the Western so-called scientific methodology. In the West, the approach is quite egocentric to me. Very self-centric approach, because there is a primacy of human sense impressions. What I see with my own eyes has a higher validity than anybody else's perception. And the sensory observations of qualitative or quantitative attributes of objects, they are based on perceptions of our eyes, our senses. And the perception of eyes, either directly or aided by instruments like telescope or microscope or spectrometer or infrared or radio measuring instruments. So based on those perceptions, our scientists formulate a hypothesis, a mathematical model, a theory, and then judge the validity of their perceptions based on its reproducibility and testability. Whereas Indian rishis, Indian wise men, Indian seers recognized upfront the limitations of our eyes and our senses. Because they knew that even when eyes see, they don't see things as they really are. Yathana toyeto bhinna taranga feina budbuda. A simple example is that in the ocean you see multitudes of waves, foam or froth, and bubbles. To our eyes, they all appear distinct. But if you contemplate on their real nature, then they are all the same. They are all water. And even when there is no error in perception, and the sensory perceptions are like accurate, they see what it is, like they see a rope in a rope, not snake. But even then, our sensory observations, our sensory perceptions have an inherent and fundamental limitation, because by their own nature, senses are extroverted. They cannot see, eyes cannot see themselves, eyes can only see outside. Ears can only listen what lies outside. Similarly, the sense of touch can only feel what is outside. So knowledge that is gained by our senses is inherently flawed, inherently incomplete, and partial. But also, just because eyes don't see, it doesn't mean conclusively that any object does not exist. Beyond the pratyaksh or direct sensory perception or cognition, there are things which exist, and they can also be seen, understood, known through anuman. For example, we can't see fire, but we see there is a smoke. And so, with the knowledge of the smoke, we gain knowledge of the fire that exists. Stars, during the daytime, stars are there, but we cannot see the stars. Similarly, the tortoise has ability of like withdrawing its limbs. So when it has withdrawn its limbs, then the tortoise, we don't see the limbs of tortoise. But it does not mean that they don't exist. So Indian approach has been to not just depend on the senses, but also a deeper consciousness, deeper thinking. They try to see things, know things through their effect. Karyas tatupalabdhe. It becomes known because of its consequence, its impact. And the third most important aspect, an issue bothering our sages was who sees, who knows. And they came to conclusion that it's not eyes that see, and not even mind which sees. Yat chakshusha na pashyati, yena chakshunshi pashyati. Yad vacha anubheditam yena vagabhyudyate. Yan manusa na manute, yena hurmano. So they knew that eyes are not the seers, but eyes derive their power to see from something that is the ultimate seer. The speech does not describe that power, but derives its power from something. Mind cannot describe and contemplate, because mind's power comes from that, the real knower. The Atma is the real seer, the real knower, the real doer, the master. Yo Veda sa Atma, Yoyam Vijnanamaya sa Atma. Thing which knows, thing which is conscious of things is Atma, the soul. Yah drashta, shrota, manta, vigyata, sa atmeti. One that sees, that listens, that thinks, that knows is the Atma itself. Drashter drashta, shruter shrota, mater manta, vigyater vigyata, sa atmeti. It is that single entity called soul, is the vision of the eyes, the hearing power of the ear, and the thinking power of the mind, and consciousness of the conscious. Atma cannot be seen itself by extroverted eyes, extroverted senses. Soyam Atma agrihyo, that Atma cannot be grasped by physical means. Na chakshusha grahyate, napi vacha, nanyaih devaih tapasa karmanava. That Atma cannot be grasped by our eyes, nor by our speech, nor by any other actions or rituals. Jnana prasadena vishuddha sattvaha, tatah tu tam pashyate nishkalam dhyayamanah. The only way to realize, to understand, to grasp the Atma is through blessing of knowledge, with purity of your mind, and nishkalam dhyayamana, with dedicated, devoted, concentrated meditation. So the basic technique that Indian rishis evolved to know is to turn senses inwards, meditate. So yoga and dhyan becomes very, very critical, very central contribution of Indian mind. Kashchit dhirah pratyagat madamaichat avritta chakshusha. It is only someone who is very wise, who has the desire, the unfulfilled, thirst to know and know the reality. Pratyagatmanaichat avritta chakshushu. So to see that ultimate knower, the ultimate reality, he turns eyes inwards and sees with closed eyes. Avritta chakshusha. When we see with closed eyes, avritta chakshusha, an entirely new universe, altogether different from the worldly consciousness, a different state of knowledge, different state of consciousness emerges. And this marks probably the most significant landmark inflection in human thought. The inward vision has very profound implications. First of all, it unifies the external and the internal universe. We become conscious of a continuum within and without. Yavan vai ayam akashah, tavan esh hridaye akashah. That big vast sky that exists outside is also within me, in my heart. Tasmin antah eva ubhe dyava prithvi. In my heart, my within, also exists that earth and also the outer sky. Second aspect is the external diversities, divergences are replaced by convergence to a single point. The same center, if you visualize on a circle on which you are all diverging, looking inwards, then all different lines of thought, lines of action, approach, they converge to a single point. In Vedic texts, there are very beautiful symbols of hub and spoke, chariot wheel, rath nabha vivara, and also in our emblem Ashoka Chakra. So these see the wheel and realize how the significance of convergence rather than divergence is emphasized. Then you realize that there is only one single ultimate destination of all, numerous, in fact, infinite paths. All of them are equally valid. Even those which appear diametrically opposite are reaching the same point. All become one. They lose their individuality. They merge in one single point. Third, that the central point, the focal point of the Sanatan Bharatiya Darshan Chintan is that point called Brahma or Atma at an individual level. Eko Devah Sarva Bhuteshu Gudha. Ekameva Advitiyam. Brahma represents oneness of all knowledge, pure state of consciousness, unchanging reality, unchanging state of bliss. Sat Chit Anand Swarup. Sat Chit Anand is he is Sat Chit Anand. It's not his virtue or quality. Like today I am happy, tomorrow I am not happy. In a moment I am not conscious, next moment I am not conscious. So that is not the feature of Brahma. Brahma is always full of bliss. It exists all times, and also it is conscious of everything. Pure consciousness is Brahman itself. And that is why the ultimate quest for Indian mind has been Atmagyan. The ultimate knowledge, the ultimate quest is one single objective. The only object to be seen, to be known, to be thought and contemplated upon. Because once you know that, then you know all. One who knows all knows that single thing. Yah ekam janati, sa sarvam janati. One who knows that one knows everything. Yah sarvam janati, sa ekam janati. One who knows everything ultimately knows that one single thing. And if you have consciousness of that ultimate reality, then it has a very profound impact on how we realize, how we see, how we relate to the outer world, the rest of the outs, which is not us. Yatra nanyat pashyati, nanyat shrunoti, nanyat janati, sa bhumat. You become, instead of petty, insignificant, transient, you become immortal, you become infinite, called Bhuma, Virat. And that state is described by Yatra Nanyat Pashyati. You don't see otherness. Nanyat Shrunoti, you don't hear other. Nanyat Pashyati, Nanyat Janat, you don't know other. And Yo Vai Bhuma Tadamritam Mat, Yad Alpam Tan Martyam. And that Viratness, that infinitude is immortality. Whatever is small, whatever is petty, whatever is parochial is death. Bhumaiva sukham, nalpe sukhamasti. It's the Viratness, Bhuma, which is sukha, happiness. Nalpe sukhamasti. If you have a small parochial, petty attitude, there is no question that you will suffer. That state of no otherness, self becomes all-inclusive, infinite, immortal. Like a tiny drop of water is transient, it vanishes very soon. But when it merges into the ocean, it becomes kind of immortal. And dissolving the egoistic notion of I, me, mine, you, and your, gives way to understanding of not just belief but knowledge, the consciousness of one single web of existence, interconnected, interdependent. Vishwam bhavatyeka nidam. The entire natural existence becomes one single abode, or in Vedic Sanskrit, nidam also means body. So the entire natural existence becomes one single body, one single entity. And therefore, there is concern not just for one planet. The international community has woken up to dangers of our planet. So they talk about Prithvi and one Earth and the dangers being posed by climate change or human activities because to this planet Earth. But Indian mind was not limited to concern for this one single planet, but for the entire natural existence. And they prayed for, they worked for peace and harmony and stability in the entire existence. Om Dyohu Shantihi. In the sky, in the upper skies, there be peace. Antariksham Shantihi. The atmosphere be full of peace. Prithvi Shantihi. Apah Shanti. Earth, there be peace. Apah Shanti. In the water, let there be peace. Shantihi Oshadayah, Shantihi Vanaspatayah. So the entire existence is one, and therefore there cannot be peace and harmony if any part is in disharmony. And that is why, friends, as a thinking creature, the mankind has obligations towards all sustainability of the entire cosmic ecosystem. And talking and because Prithvi, this earth, this world does not belong to human being alone. All other creatures, even inanimate objects, have a stake in our future and this broader ecosystem. Friends, coming to the issue of human rights, that broad approach, as Dr. Tomarji mentioned, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, that vision of our interconnectedness, what our Prime Minister Modi describes as Vishwa Bandhu, as vision of India's global connection. So that interdependence, interconnectedness is the root, the foundation of our concept of human rights. And I may mention that when the UN Declaration of Human Rights was negotiated in 1948, it was an Indian lady which put her foot down and bargained very hard for a neutral, sensitive formulation. Otherwise, like US and France, all other Western countries before that has only spoken about rights of man. So UN might have ended with a UN Declaration of Rights of Man rather than UN Declaration of Human Rights. So changing that terminology from rights of man to human rights is owed to a very prominent Indian thinker and freedom fighter, Hansa Mehta. So I recognize her contribution. Also, friends, we inherently believe that rights don't exist in vacuum. They emanate from a corresponding set of duties. In fact, in Sanskrit, adhikar means rights and kartavya means duty. Both have same root word, kri. Kri means to do. So the obsession with individual rights, maximalist, without caring for rights of all the rest, and working for maximalist, uncompromising approach to my rights, and without concern even for my duties towards others, is playing havoc, is causing so much of strife in the world, tension and disharmony, because we have lost sight of the broader picture of interconnectedness between rights and duties. So, friends, it all begins with individual's mind, individual's thought. That triggers action. That awareness triggers action, and that every single individual, as a stakeholder in this cosmic existence, has a role to play. And we all collectively and individually can make a difference. Once again, my very sincere thanks to Dr. Tomaji for inviting me and allowing me opportunity to share my thoughts. Thank you so much.
So kind of you, sir. I feel short of words. I think in your speech you summarized whole philosophy of this whole week along of International Week of Peace. So nicely you started with where everybody can connect with human suffering, and you said that it is the jnana that is the cause of it, and you mentioned the example of rope and snake, and we need to rise the consciousness from ecocentric or sense-centric approach. And then you mentioned about how saints and seers went beyond what is pratyaksha because entries are outward, and they also mentioned about anumana and inference. You also mentioned the fundamental deep question of hard question of consciousness. Who is the seer? Who knows? You in and out quoted Upanishads, Kathopanishad, Kenopanishad, Isha Upanishad, Vedas, and Dragdrashya Viveka. We are so inspired to see. And then you mentioned that Atma is the knower, the eye of the eye, and it cannot be seen. The word that you mentioned is so profound. Avrati Chakshu. So withdraw our senses and see it differently. And when you see it differently, you mentioned from unified, you reach a unified vision, from divergence to convergence to that single point. And you realize, you said, then we realize Ekamev Aditya. And once you know it, Ekam Janati, Sarva Janati, you connected it back where you started, Ajnana, and then you connected it back, and then you say that once you see it, and you again quoted Nanyanti Pashanti, somebody who sees differences, doesn't see it clearly, but the moment you see oneness, you see Amritam, and then you invoke the Shanti, and you connected it back to the complete bigger picture of this whole consciousness movement and peace. And you mentioned that Shanti is in oneness, and that's why we have obligation to others also. And that's why you invoke the human responsibilities. And it is for the first time I'm hearing that human kartavya and adhikar have come out of the same root. So inspired that. And with you, we also bow down to Hansa Mehtaji, and we acknowledge her presence during those fundamental declarations of human rights. Sir, I think one of the wisest decisions United Consciousness made is to request you to come and bless us with your presence. So kind of you, sir. Thank you very much for inspiring. Thank you very much for Shilpi ji also to make all the regards. Thank you.
On behalf of United Consciousness, I thank Ambassador Akhilesh Mishra for coming on to the platform of United Consciousness and sharing his views. Thank you so much.